Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Josh, and today I've got a video that is going to stir up all kinds of comments, all kinds of opinions, and you know what? That's what YouTube is here for us to have the discourse down in the comments about all the things that we are passionate about. But today, what I want to talk about is Prado 150 versus Prado 250. I have the great and immense privilege right now of having both of those cars in my driveway, and before I have to give this one back, I wanted to do this video because I have so many thoughts and have had just such a wild experience getting to now live with this new Land Cruiser 1958 for about a week or so. And this is going to be a comparison, but it's not going to be a comparison in terms of we're going to choose a winner between the two. What I wanted to do is I really want to just talk about the differences, and there are so many differences, night and day differences between the Prado 150 that I own, which is my GX460, and this new Prado 250, like what we're driving in this 1958. We are at such an interesting point in history and in time where the regulations that are dictating what cars can and cannot be are forcing automakers to mess with the formulas that have always been incredibly successful for them. And as a result, we're starting to see these changes happen to these flagship legacy brands and vehicles like Land Cruiser. I mean, we are sitting in a Land Cruiser that has an inline-4 turbocharged hybridized engine. And this is where all cars are going in the future. I mean, we have Silverado today with a 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder as its base engine. Like, the trucks are changing today. And that presents a really interesting conundrum for the truck buyer, but more specifically the Toyota truck buyer. And the reason I wanted to do this video is because I am a Toyota truck buyer. I have owned in the past 5 years a 4Runner TRD Pro. I currently own a Lexus GX460, and I've had Tacomas and other Toyota trucks in the past, as well as other trucks from other automakers. And the thing about what's going on right now, the reason I wanted to do this video and talk about the night and day differences between Prado 150, my GX460, and Prado 250, this new Land Cruiser, is because there are so many that make for a really interesting comparison video. So that's what we're going to do today. And let's start out by talking about these two trucks. We'll start with the one that I'm sitting in right now, which is a 2024 brand new Toyota Land Cruiser 1958. Now, if you're one of my viewers from overseas, you will know this car under two other names. You may know it as the Land Cruiser Prado, or if you're in this vehicle's home market in Japan, you'll probably know it simply as the Land Cruiser 250. Either way, whichever name you know, this is the next generation light-duty, mid-size Land Cruiser. It is not the new flagship, full-size, heavy-duty Land Cruiser 300 series, and that's a big difference to keep in mind. And next to it, we have the 2023 Lexus GX460, and this is, of course, my personal vehicle. And if you've been with me here on the channel or you've watched any of my other videos, you probably know at this point just how much I love it. And the reason I wanted to do this comparison is if you know your Land Cruisers, you'll also know that this GX460, despite the Lexus badge on the front and the different name, is ultimately a Prado 150 series. Now, again, you might think that this is a really weird comparison because this Land Cruiser 1958 is a stripped down, back to basics, dedicated off-roader, where the GX460 is a proper old school limousine-like luxury vehicle. However, what these two share in common, believe it or not, is a price tag. This Land Cruiser 1958 has a sticker price, including destination, of $57,495. Yeah, for the fleet spec truck. Now, obviously, you can't buy the GX460 new anymore because this vehicle was discontinued at the end of the 2023 model year. But because this vehicle is still at this point really only a year out of production, there are still a ton of like new, low mileage, certified pre-owned GX460s for about the same price as that Land Cruiser in the mid to high 50s on the CPO market. And that's why I wanted to do this comparison, because if you have $60,000 in your budget, you can get either one of these cars. And although they are worlds apart in almost every respect, they do cost the same price. And that's a big decision for you to make if you're in the market for one. Okay, so we're going to start with purpose. And what I mean by purpose is the mission of each of these vehicles and the purpose that they fulfill for their owners and their position in the marketplace. And again, despite the fact that these are just the same vehicle, two different generations, the mission of each of these cars is so incredibly different. If you aren't well versed in Land Cruiser Prado history, from day one, the Prado was always meant to be a slightly more premium all-rounder, a baby brother, if you will, to the full-size heavy-duty Land Cruiser. Toyota, in fact, in their literature, even up through the 150 generation of this vehicle, called it a multi-purpose vehicle, which ultimately means that this car was designed to live on-road, but venture off-road with ease. And this is where I think a lot of people have a misconception about what the Land Cruiser Prado is. Not all Land Cruisers are designed to be only used off-road. A lot of them, like the full-size flagship Land Cruiser and this Land Cruiser Prado 150, has always been that all-rounder, that multi-purpose vehicle. And that's why when Lexus was looking for a mid-size 3-row SUV to bring to market here in the United States, they chose the Land Cruiser Prado because they knew that while a lot of their owners wanted something that was very capable off-road, a lot of their owners would always keep their GX on-road. And actually, one of the most interesting things that's come out of the various press releases and press kits is this infographic that you're seeing here on screen, which shows how with the 150 Prado and all Prado generations prior, it was a semi-premium offering that firmly had a wheel, if you will, in both on-road and off-road driving. And this is why the new Prado 250 series is a big departure, because the new Prado 250 is supposed to be a back-to-basics off-roader. And that's partially why in our US market GX 550, it's lost a lot of the luxury attributes and premium on-road driving that we have in the GX 460, because the vehicle that the GX 550 is based upon is no longer meant to be a premium all-rounder multi-purpose vehicle. It is a back-to-basics off-roader that Lexus had to figure out how to make a little bit nicer to sell as a Lexus in our market here in the United States. And this paradigm is also why in the US, we have always had a 4Runner. And people tend to think that the GX, like 460, for example, and 5th gen 4Runner are kind of interchangeable, but that's not actually how this whole lineup works. The GX 460 was always meant to be, again, the great all-rounder, multi-purpose, premium or luxurious vehicle here in the United States. And then you bought the 4Runner if you wanted a dedicated off-roader. The GX and 4Runner existing in the market together worked because the GX was that all-rounder, semi-premium, on-road focused vehicle, and the 4Runner was the off-roader. But now that the GX 550, Land Cruiser 250, and 4Runner are all meant to be, all three of these share the same mission of being a back-to-basics off-roader, it makes the market a little bit crowded, and we no longer have, as a result, a true luxury mid-size all-rounder vehicle that's body on frame the way that we do with this GX 460. And that is the very first thing that anyone considering either of these cars needs to think about. On one hand, the luxurious experience, the high quality materials, and the beautiful craftsmanship in the GX 460 cabin is really appealing, especially to people like me who spend about 90% of their time on road. However, I have to tell you in all honesty, this is not the kind of cabin that you want to thrash and trash with cargo, people, stuff, mud, dirt, and all the other things that you're going to pick up and just bring along with you as you go out into the wilderness. And on the other hand, you might want the cool off-roader look, but understand that if you don't actually go off-roading by buying one of these new Land Cruisers, you are giving up all on-road comfort and driving dynamics that you can get in a GX 460 to have the off-road capability. This is a dedicated off-roader. It is not meant to go to Target and go to the mall and go to the office, okay? It is meant to get out on the dirt and go climb a mountain. Next, let's talk about size. And this is another really important consideration that you have to think about if you're in the market for either of these vehicles, because there is a big difference in size. Despite the fact that these are the same vehicles, just two different generations of them, the new Prado 250 is 4 inches wider in body width alone, not including the mirrors, than the Prado 150, and it is 5 inches longer in total length than the Prado 150. And so the Prado 250 is a considerably larger car than we've ever had with the Prado in the past. And in fact, because of the overall dimensions of this car, it's actually the same size as a full-size heavy-duty 200 series Land Cruiser. So do be aware, although this is marketed in some countries, including here in the United States, as a mid-size SUV, it's not really a mid-size SUV. It is way closer to a full-size SUV. And so if you park in tight parking garages, you live in a congested city, or you have a small garage at home, this truck may not fit. And I'll tell you now, having driven both the GX 550 and our US market Land Cruiser, the difference in dimensions hasn't just changed the footprint of the vehicle, it's also really changed the driving dynamics. In addition to the fact that, again, we are moving away, the Prado is moving away from being an all-rounder to a bare bones off-roader, the bigger size of the vehicle changes the way it feels on the road. They don't handle as well as this GX 460 or a Prado 150. They're bulkier on the road. They feel bigger on the road. And because they have gone back to that kind of back to basics off-roader feel, there's a lot more body roll than you ever have had in a Prado before. Because again, these new Land Cruisers are not meant for on-road driving. They're meant for off-road, back to basics, overlanding. Oh, Jesus. I don't think I have to tell you all how smooth and quiet and steady the ride is in the GX 460. If you haven't ever driven a late model GX 460, it is unlike anything else on the market. Partly because it's, you know, a dinosaur and it's old, but this car truly has that old school limousine-like ride. It is bank vault quiet, impossibly smooth, and nearly silent because of the V8. And on top of that, there is zero body roll in these GX 460s and many Prado 150s, because a lot of them did come with the old school hydraulic KDSS system versus the new electronic KDSS system, which you can get here in the US on some of the Lexus GX 550 models. And the big difference between old school hydraulic KDSS and the new electronic eKDSS system seems to be that hydraulic KDSS was hydraulic. It meant that your stabilizer bars were locked into place when you were on road, and that's what just gets rid of all the body roll in the GX 460. The eKDSS system in the new GX 550 and some world market Land Cruiser 250s is computerized. And what I found in our US market GXs is it doesn't actually get rid of any of the body roll on road. All it does is add more articulation when you need it off road. So the unfortunate and kind of strange thing for me, at least in my opinion, about the new eKDSS system is if all it's going to do is unlock my stabilizer bars for way more articulation off-road, because that's what the new GX 550 is all about, I don't really see a reason why it needs to exist in the first place. I mean, maybe the body roll would be so bad in the new GXs without eKDSS, but frankly, it doesn't do anything for the on-road driving experience. And I personally much prefer the way that this GX 460 drives. And really, the only other SUV I've ever found that drives in a way that is similar to this GX is something like an Escalade with its V8 and its kind of old school Cadillac limousine-like ride. The difference between the Escalade and the GX 460, of course, is the Escalade is a full-size American SUV, and it drives that way out on the road. If you've ever driven a Tahoe, you know exactly what I mean. It is like a barge, where this GX 460 is far more agile because it's a mid-size, small footprint SUV. On the other hand, if you're coming from something like a 4Runner or a Bronco or a Wrangler and you like the way that trucks drive, I think you'll really like the way that this Land Cruiser drives, because you don't have the luxury car kind of isolation from the road that is uncharacteristic of body-on-frame SUVs. And not everyone is going to understand what I mean when I say what I'm about to say, but there can actually be something quite fun about having an unapologetically unrefined truck out on the road, like a Bronco, a 400 TRD Pro, Jeep Wrangler. The thrill of getting to take those cars up to high speeds in controlled environments, which I have done with my 4Runner TRD Pro on 33-inch tires. I got that thing up to 115 miles an hour, and let me tell you, that was a ton of fun. It was scary, but you know, what is life without a little thrill sometimes? So if you like that, you may actually really enjoy the way that this new Prado 250 drives. All right, next up, let's move on to technology, and we're gonna stay right here in the 250 because let's not beat around the bush. The technology in here is worlds better than any Prado that we've ever gotten in the past. Even in this 1958 version, which has the small screens and a lack of any kind of comfort tech, the technology overall in this car is just, it is up to date here in 2024. So we have a really great infotainment system. This gets even better on the big 12-inch screen, and it has wireless Apple CarPlay, works great, looks great. I have no complaints. And on the safety tech front, the ADAS technology front, of course, we have Toyota TSS 3.0, or if you buy the Lexus, it's LSS 3.0. And I don't think, at least from what I know of, and I know a lot about Toyota cars, I don't think there has ever been a car that has gone from TSS Plus, which is what the last gen Prado and our 4Runner has, all the way, giant leap to 3.0. But that's what the Land Cruiser 250 and GX 550 have done. They have all the latest technology, great driver assist, and the thing I really like about the TSS LSS 3.0 suite is the driver assist features have gotten to a point where they feel so natural. Like when you're using adaptive cruise control, it has a nuanced feel to it that almost makes it feel like a human is driving. And that's something that even 3 or 4 years ago with like TSS 2.0 or 2.5 plus, you would still have those moments where you could tell that a machine is driving the car. 3.0, really nuanced. I have total confidence in the features in 3.0, and it's really nice to have them now in a Land Cruiser. And finally, on the technology front, I am going to throw the hybrid engine in here, even though if you watch my full review, you know I'm not crazy about this engine at the moment. But I think that in years to come, as they refine out some of the things that I don't care for right now, and if they can improve the fuel economy beyond its abysmal numbers that it's getting, at least with me right now, I do think that this Land Cruiser can be a viable option in the world that we live in today, where regulation is defining what kind of engines cars can have. Listen, automakers just can't put a big V8 in these kind of cars anymore. They can't. They can't put a naturally aspirated V6 in these kind of cars anymore. And so, unfortunately, if you want to buy a new truck today, it's going to have an engine something like this. It's going to be some kind of turbo, some kind of supercharger, and or hybridization. I know people don't like it, but again, so is the state of the world today. And it's an impressive piece of technology unto itself. It needs to be refined, but as a piece of technology, rather impressive. And finally, for our last point of comparison, we had to get out of the Land Cruiser and come on back into this GX 460 because we are going to talk about quality and fit and finish. And I'm sorry to say, the Land Cruiser is a great looking product. It's going to get a lot of attention on the road. It's going to turn heads. People are going to love it because of the look. But when you actually get inside, the quality is just different. It's not bad by any stretch. It's on par. It's average for any new car that's come out here in 2024. But none of the new Toyota truck products out there, in my opinion, can match the old school tank-like Toyota quality that we have always gotten on older Land Cruisers, older Land Cruiser Prados, older 4Runners. There's just a quality that is invisible yet perceptible in these cars that makes them feel so different and makes them feel so special. The metal body panels on these older trucks are thicker. Everything is steel. There is no aluminum. The plastics on the inside are so thick, so robust. They do not bend, they do not give, and even the very few pieces in this GX that are hard plastic feel so much better and thicker than the pieces of hard plastic that are in abundance in the new Land Cruiser. The wooden steering wheel and all the wood trim in this car is hand polished by skilled artisans in Japan. That's no longer found on even luxury Lexus vehicles. There are a lot of touches in this GX 460 that just don't exist in the newer Toyota products. And if you care about that kind of thing and you prioritize quality over status and engineering over image, you really want to look at either a Prado 150 or, if you're here in the US, a Lexus GX 460. Now, before we wrap this up, I do want to note that if you want a Prado 250 and you want some of the nicer amenities that you would get in a Prado 150 or my GX 460, for example, you can absolutely find them in other versions of the new Land Cruiser, including the new GX 550. The problem is, either of those, whether you go with the mid-trim Land Cruiser here in the US or GX 550, the price on them is going to be at least $10,000 more. A fully loaded mid-trim Land Cruiser 250, which is going to get you closest to the features that I have in my GX 460, will set you back $68,095, including destination. And a comparable GX 550 luxury, which you have to do to get the Mark Levinson sound system, which I have, will set you back $78,390. And both of those are considerably more expensive than the 1958 or a 2023 GX 460, which again, you can have for about $60,000 instead of $70,000 or $80,000. And on top of that, the other big difference between an older generation product like this Prado 150 or GX 460 versus a new Prado 250 or Lexus GX 550 is because we have gone away from the overbuilt, under-stressed, naturally aspirated, big displacement engines to high-strung turbo hybrid 4s, turbo hybrid 6s. The feeling of that big, heavy engine in the front of this vehicle makes such a difference in the on-road driving experience. Now, Toyota cars in the past could feel very front heavy because there was such a giant engine under the hood. But what that created, in my experience, and I've driven a lot of these Toyota vehicles over the years, is a feeling of confidence and a feeling of substantiality that I don't think you get in the new products. And that to me also takes away from the feeling of quality in some of those new cars. Now, I fully understand. Let me be very clear. I support environmental efforts 100%. My daily driver is a RAV4 Prime that I drive in EV mode most of the time. So I understand why Toyota is moving to these smaller turbo hybrid, and just straight hybrid engines. But you do have to know, if you like the feeling of having a big, heavy, naturally aspirated engine under the hood in older Toyota cars, that is lacking from a lot of these new cars out there. And overall, engine, interior, technology, all of this, everything we've talked about here, combined in these new cars, is kind of the difference between something like a beautiful old Rolex or a great Swiss watch. Very mechanical, really well built. A feeling that this is a lifetime heirloom quality product versus something like an Apple Watch. Now, Apple Watches are great, okay? They are technologically advanced devices. They can measure your heart rate. They can track your health. They can even catch AFib and maybe even save your life. But there is a difference, and there's going to be different customers out there who will want the Apple Watch versus the Rolex. And it just depends on which one of those you are. Personally, I tend to gravitate toward the Rolex because if I'm spending tens of thousands of dollars on a product, I want that product to last me as long as I want it to. On the other hand, there are people who will go out there and spend $100,000 on a car that they may only keep for a few years. And for them, having the newest, the latest, the greatest, the most technologically advanced, the most status conscious, the most image conscious product out there really, really matters. And I think that's kind of confused and changed the upgrade path because, going from the first generation GX470 to the second generation GX460, it was the same buyer, I think, who was buying those two different vehicles, right? The person who wanted the great on-road, all-rounder, luxurious, V8 driving experience. But now that there has been such a substantial change, I don't really think the GX460 buyer is the one who's looking at any of these new Land Cruisers. I don't think the GX460 buyer is looking at the new GX550 either. I think the most reasonable upgrade path for a GX460 owner is an LX600 or maybe a QX80. But even there, you're making trade-offs and you're getting a different vehicle in those two as well. So the automotive industry is just at a really interesting point where consumer demand is through the roof for these kind of vehicles, but with automakers trying to maximize both profits and regulators trying to minimize emissions, we just have these new generation trucks that have been compromised in a way that they never had to be compromised in the past. And if you're like me and you like an unfussy, basic powertrain and naturally aspirated, no hybrids, no turbos, no superchargers, kind of all the old school stuff that we always have come to love with these body-on-frame Toyota SUVs, that is the GX460, and that is, it's a product of an era that is very quickly coming to an end. At the end of 2024, you will no longer be able to buy a 5th gen Toyota 4Runner. So we have a window of time, I think, where you can still buy one, again, with a 5th gen 4Runner new today, or a CPO almost new GX460. And for those who don't want the old school dinosaur, antiquated, back to basics kind of car, you want high tech, you want, trendy looks, buy a 250. Because listen, if you can get past the engine or you buy a GX550, they're fine. They're great. They don't feel the same, but I think, but people who want something new and exciting, they don't want it to feel like a GX460 anyway. So they'll probably really like the GX550 or this Land Cruiser 250. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you guys again so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Questions and comments, leave them downstairs. Or as always, you can write to me at the email that you see here on screen. I love hearing from you guys. And so many of the emails that I get in that email inbox help me better understand different perspective of different buyers out there. And that's really important for someone who makes the kind of videos here on this channel that I do. Anyway, love getting your emails. Thank you for sending them. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one. Have a great one and take care.